Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election in a scenario if you know what happens. Basically, the 3M drop boxes that happened in 2020, just a repeat of that, basically 2.0, and basically what if the election was not that fair? But I just can't say it on this platform, as y'all know. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss on my content, press the like button, share this video if you are interested. Don't forget we do have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Now, I did this video a while back when Biden was still in the race. Now let's do it again because Kamala is obviously in the race now. So let's begin with the likely states for Kamala Harris in this election. Basically, in this scenario, if the 3M drop boxes were to happen once again. And the reason why that occurred in the 2020 election was because obviously COVID. We had skyrocketed mail-in voting rather than in person, which really just flooded the polls on election day, especially at 3 a.m. specifically, because right before 3 a.m. Donald Trump was actually leading in basically most of the swing states. He was up in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania over Joe Biden. But then when 3 a.m. happened, obviously all the votes got dumped in, and then he officially lost his lead. So I do think in this specific scenario, Kamala is going to win Minnesota by a likely margin of somewhere in between 6 to 7 points, a little bit under Joe Biden's margin in the 2020 election, mainly because obviously there's no BLM. What happened in George Floyd really pushed the suburbs here to the left, especially Minneapolis as well. I also do think that Kamala Harris can do significantly better with the women vote as well. And considering that she does have Tim Walz as her VP on her ticket, obviously the governor here, that gives her the home state advantage electorally. So Tim Walz can help her with that impact. Therefore, I do think Minnesota will be likely for Harris this time around, especially if 3M 2.0 were to take place. And then I also do think New Hampshire is going to be likely for her. I do think the margins is going to be similar to Minnesota of somewhere in between 6 to maybe 7 percentage points. If you actually take a look at majority of the polling data, New Hampshire is actually one of the more bluer swing states there are. It has a lot of college-educated voters, as y'all know, and Tim Walz, as his time, as governor, he focused heavily on education. And I think that can correlate to a lot of New Hampshire voters with a large college-educated vote share. That voter group specifically really turns out well for Democrats, so it's not going to be really competitive for Donald Trump, especially if 3M were to happen once again. And Virginia is going to be likely for her by probably a little over 5 percentage points, slightly closer than Minnesota and New Hampshire, just because, you take a look at the Glenn Youngkin endorsement of Donald Trump, the governor here, who's very popular, by the way, and he's pushed for mandating paper ballot only on election day. The state would be called faster. And just the fact that overall, in general, it's just, the governor here is Republican, Glenn Youngkin, obviously. So maybe that could impact some things in favor of Donald Trump, but still not going to be enough, obviously, to overcome the 3 a.m. And then that's the likely states for Kamala. Now moving on to the likely states for Donald Trump. In this scenario, I think it's going to be Ohio. Obviously, J.D. Vance is going to help Trump electorally, home state advantage for the VP, just like Minnesota for Tim Walz. And also, Texas is going to be likely for Donald Trump, even if 3M were to happen again, regardless, just because, over the simple fact that in 2020, even when 3M did happen, when all the drop boxes came in at, all the mail-in voting came in at 3M, Texas was still likely for Donald Trump. He still managed to win it by 5.5 percentage points. So the fact that it was likely in a less favorable year in 2020, when all the things went to the opposite direction in favor of Joe Biden, and we're looking at 2024, it's more favorable for Donald Trump. Clearly, obviously, Texas will remain likely for him, especially considering it is a border state and immigration is a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address that whatsoever. And then moving on to the lean states for both these candidates, starting off with Donald Trump. I think Florida's going to be lean for him if the 3M were to occur, basically a 2.0 of that. Now, if you take a look at the early voting in this state, it's actually favoring Democrats as expected, but still the numbers are not too surprising for Donald Trump. Therefore, if you actually take a look at majority of polling, it could be decided within maybe 5 to 6 percentage points, somewhere closer to a likely margin. But for the sake of this video, because of let's just say if that were to happen, 3 a.m. 2.0, maybe Florida will be decided by under 5 points, as it was in the 2020 election. It will be lean for Donald Trump. And then you have the Kamala Harris lean states, which I think there won't be any in this scenario, so we're going to skip right towards the tilt states for both these candidates. I think Wisconsin will be tilt for her. All of these three Rust Belt states, that could be the deciding factor of who ultimately wins this election. Michigan and Pennsylvania, and I also do think Nevada will be tilt for Kamala Harris by under percentage point, extremely close, just decided by a few thousand votes if the 3M mail-in dump were to happen 2.0. This would be basically a Republican nightmare scenario, and Democrats would be extremely happy to have this happen. So, the three Rust Belt states will be going for Kamala Harris. Let's start off with Nevada. Now, Hillary Clinton actually did slightly better, as she actually performed in par or in line with Joe Biden's 2020 performance in the state of Nevada. And time again, Republicans are overestimated in this state every single election cycle. In 2022, Adam Laxalt was supposed to defeat Catherine Cortez Masto. The exact opposite happened. He ended up losing. So Nevada is that one state that is kind of tricky because it does overestimate Republicans' chances. And the Vegas area, Clark County, is a Democratic stronghold county. Democrats rely in that one particular county. And Washoe as well. If Democrats do good in Washoe County, then I think Kamala's on track to win this state. But considering that Republicans are overestimated in this state in terms of the polling data, maybe there could be a scenario in which Kamala does end up winning the state of Nevada, just like Hillary Clinton did in 2016. A more favorable year for Republicans, and Trump still could not manage to pull off the victory in Nevada. Let's just say, okay, Kamala does win it because of not only 3M, but also Clark County is a Democratic stronghold county. It's hard for Trump to overcome the votes, and there, especially if the 3M mail-in dump were to happen again. And then as for Wisconsin, I think Kamala would win it by probably a smaller amount than Joe Biden did. He only won it by 0.6. Let's just say it would be like 0.2 or 0.3 this time around. And then you have Michigan, which was the bluest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020 and 2016, the Obama era as well. Michigan voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So considering that Michigan was the bluest Rust Belt state of the three, I do see Kamala winning it, especially if the 3M 2.0 were to happen again. And then you have Pennsylvania, in which I think if she does hang on to Erie County for the Democrats, Northampton, which only went to Biden by 0.7%. Yet again, just like Wisconsin, I do think she will win Pennsylvania, but by a lesser margin than Joe Biden's victory. He won it by 1.2. I think she'll probably win it by 0.4 or 0.5, for an example, but only if the 3M 2.0 were to happen again. Now, if this is just a regular prediction, yes, I do have Trump winning Pennsylvania, obviously. And then, obviously, Central County, Biden won that by a little over 4 percentage points. If she does hang on to those counties that I just mentioned, then she probably has a decent shot at winning this state. And then you have the Trump tilt states. Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina will all be tilt for Donald Trump. Narrow victory margin decided by under a percentage point, just a few thousand votes. Let's begin with Arizona. Obviously, this is a border state, so I think that issue is a number one priority to a lot of these voters out there, and it's not a good issue for Kamala Harris. And I think that alone favors Donald Trump pretty significantly in the state, just like in Texas as well. And even if the 3M happens again, I think it would probably impact the Rust Belt more than it does to the Sun Belt, because the majority of polls on Polymarket, not only that, RCP, and even 538 as well, which typically overestimates Democratic support, is showing that Kamala Harris is basically losing the Sun Belt, and their only chance is through the Rust Belt. That's why I said that I think if the 3M 2.0 happens, it's only going to impact the Rust Belt rather than the Sun Belt, giving your 276 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 262. Basically, the entirety of the state comes down to Maricopa County. Now, there is a scenario in which Harris does win Maricopa but still loses the state. If she only wins it by 1 point, that's not enough. Trump can still win if he makes improvements in Navajo County and Yuma as well, in some of these stronghold Republican counties, because the margins for him and even some red counties in Arizona back in the last election were not strong for him, and that's what really gave Biden the victory on top of Maricopa County as well. But yes, she can still win Maricopa but still wind up losing the entirety of the state as a whole. And then you have Georgia. I just think even if 3M were to happen, she's still not going to win this state. Similar to Virginia, obviously they have a Republican governor, ensuring that the votes will be counted fairly. And with that being said, you take a look at what the Georgia legislators are doing. I believe they passed election day laws, just like Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, in which I believe all absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and won't be accepted until later. That means the state will be called faster, and it really go to Donald Trump's benefit ultimately at the end of the day. Now, our only chance of victory in Georgia is through Atlanta, the metropolitan area, the suburbs especially as well. And Biden had a high turnout among African American voters. Obviously, Kamala does not have the same enthusiasm as Biden once did in the state. Therefore, I do have Trump flipping the state of Georgia. And also, it was the closest swing state out of any other. It only went to Biden by 10,000 votes, just 0.2%, which is why I think Trump is on track to win this state. Obviously, you had the BLM stuff. You had COVID go against Donald Trump. You had the major celebrity endorsements go in favor of Joe Biden. All those factors I just mentioned are not helping Kamala Harris this time around. And then the last and final state before we end off this video is going to be North Carolina, in which they actually had a hurricane there, and same thing for Florida as well, which that may affect and impact the voting, maybe in one way or another, helping Harris or hurting Donald Trump. I'm not quite sure how that's going to impact the vote, but even if it doesn't, I think it's going to be close no matter what. Also, Mark Robinson on the governorship is really dragging down this race, hurting Donald Trump. Majority of polls have Josh Stein winning by a likely margin. And I don't want to compare the governor race to the general election, but still, I do believe Mark Robinson is slightly hurting Donald Trump. But it's not going to be enough for Kamala to end up winning this state. Therefore, Trump's going to win it by a tilt margin. He gets 262 electoral votes. So this is the map if the 3M 2.0 were to happen with all the mail-in. And I don't think it's going to happen this time around because obviously we had COVID and now we don't. So that's really hard for that to happen. And a few governors have passed election day laws, just like I mentioned, Brian Kemp from Georgia and Glenn Youngkin from Virginia, which would help Donald Trump. So there you guys go. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Do you think this scenario would take place? Why or why not? And this shouldn't really discourage you from voting. Vote no matter what. Just ignore that. Act as if that never really happened. So that's pretty much it. One last final reminder to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we have memberships. If you're interested, you can find links to that in the description section. Thank you everyone for watching.